The 2023 governorship and state assembly elections will hold tomorrow, the 18th of March, concurrent with the elections to every state house of assembly. And to discuss INEC compliance with Electoral Act in conducting elections is Dengiefa Angalapu. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Researcher at the Center for Democracy and Development. Please help us with that name again so that I would not have more than
Yeah, so the name is Dengiefa Angalapu.
Dengiefa Angalapu. You're welcome to the studio.
Thank you very much.
We have seen the first rounds of elections, as it were. We are gearing in for the second round. And I know that the Election Analysis Center has been following a lot of development pre-election, within the election period, and of course, post-election analysis. With your monitoring, would you say that we are ready, as it were, to go into tomorrow's election, given all that needs to be done ahead of that elections tomorrow?
Yeah, so really for us it is contextual, and it is based on 5 framings really. So we are talking about some determinants that will really affect the elections. Before the presidential elections we had the 5 I's, and then of course we framed our conversations around that. And going to the governorship elections, we've also had some framings, looking at some of the projections and then looking at some of the happenings in the presidential elections. So for us, really, we are looking at first identity. We are looking at how identity will play out. For many persons, identity has ended with the presidential elections. But from our findings, it is still something that it's still very relevant even in the state elections.
So when you say identity, what exactly are you implying?
Yeah, so for identity, what we are talking about, first we are talking about ethnicity, the role ethnicity will play. We are also talking about generational. We are talking about gender issues. We are talking about indigenous and settler issues and all of that. So it's whatever framings that someone can really identify with. So if you look at the governorship elections that are coming up, for many, because we don't have the tripartite system where we have, the Labour Party, the candidate being from the Igbo ethnic extractions. We don't have the PDP candidate being from the Hausa Fulani extraction and all of that. And then of course, the APC candidate being from the south, where they think it's over. But really, what people don't understand is that Nigeria is made up of 250 ethnic groups, or even more, as some must have postulated. So when you get to the state level, it is where ethnic politics comes to bear. Now, so if you look at the interesting thing about governorship elections, is the fact that these ethnic groups are not far away. They are close by, so they can either unite for good or for bad. So, for example, if you feel hatred, it is easy for someone, in a particular community with different identities to have a clash. And it is also easier for them to really come together to unite. So it's something that really comes to play, and that is why over the years, if you've noticed in governorship elections, that is where you see a lot of most of the very violent cases that occur. So it is something that we are really monitoring, and you can also see, of course, the rhetoric is now happening very, very much in Lagos. So you can see the ethnic dimension that the politics is taking, the hate speech that are going on, the Igbos versus the Hausa, the settlers and indigenous debate and all of that. It is something that even though both candidates are, of Yoruba extractions, people are now going to dig dig through the history of persons to say, one person married an Igbo person, and then so these things are really coming up. We also see the generational in many states. Also, people are actually challenging the old guards, in many states. And of course, if we look at the gender too, it is also something that it is really worrisome. Of course, Nigeria has had a decline in terms of gender representation. Thankfully, we have the APC governorship candidate from Adabawa, who is a female. We hope that maybe by efforts, and then by maybe with the efforts of women groups, maybe she might likely emerge as the governor. If you look at the results in the senatorial elections, you will see that women have had a decline. Just three women. So that is also fueling lots of grievances among female groups. So identity is really a very, very strong factor. That is one. Yes.
Okay. Now, with most of the challenges that actually marred the presidential election, a lot of Nigerians don't seem to have confidence in INEC, especially when it comes to technology, as the IRF and the Beavers. And right now, we're seeing that there is a reconfiguration of the beavers. Now, what can INEC actually do to avoid a repeat of the same thing that happened during the presidential elections?
Okay, yeah, so thank you very much. That's a very interesting question, and that would now lead us to my second framing, and that is institutional preparedness. So we looked at INEC really, and the one fundamental thing that we saw with the last election was the absence of strategic crisis communication. Yes. So what we saw was that although INEC was having challenges with high rev, INEC did not communicate appropriately. So it created some situations where fake news and disinformation rented the air. So it delegitimized INEC to a very large extent. So we are expecting that this time they will come out to communicate their challenges truthfully, and so Nigerians can even manage their expectations. I mean, we are even lucky because we are even really lucky that we did not have election violence or post-election violence as many as envisaged, because really Nigeria had a very very high expectations, and it was really botched. So we are expecting that at this time INEC will do a lot of preparation in terms of logistics. We understand that some things are beyond their control. So for example, you have infrastructural issues. I mean, I am a Bayelsan, and if you go to Bayelsa, you know that if you are going to the Brass local government, you will be on the river for a very long time.
6 hours.
Yeah. So you can imagine INEC staff, taking that kind of journey. It's something that is, and then you also have network issues. We know that half of the country, looking at the last report, half of the country does not have network. So these are challenges that INEC needs to deal with. And a third factor is really about the training. So most issues that came up that day was INEC staff forgetting password and all of that, and that really dealt on the issue of training. So they need to really train their staff properly, especially because most of the staff will now be put at danger. Because now people are saying, okay, you have to upload these results before you leave here. And it's so those are the front lines now will be put at danger, because people want to see this time that you must do your work. So they must be trained properly and also secure their staff. So INEC needs to prepare. So three key things. First, they must communicate appropriately and tell us their challenges. Let us know as Nigerians what to expect and what not to expect. And secondly is the aspect of training. They have to train their staff appropriately and let them know that they should be non-partisan. Of course, we've had issues. The Abia State rec has been suspended. Sokoto State rec has been suspended. All of this has created some kind of distrust in INEC already. So we don't want a further repeat of that, because we want an election that people can have confidence in. So we need them to train their staff properly and also deal with some of the infrastructural issues. If the high rev is not going to work, please tell Nigerians now, so that we can argue about that, we can discuss about that, and even look for a way forward. So you don't tell us it's not going to work at the eve of the elections or when we want to transmit elections. At that time, already expectations are so high. So high. So I think INEC has to manage expectations by telling us the truth and then communicating to us appropriately.
Telling us the truth and communicating. INEC has been doing a lot of talking since the presidential election. They've had the time to do that, by the way. A whopping 2 weeks or 3 in between. I mean, 2 weeks in between the last election and this governorship election. From what they have said, because you've talked about the need to communicate properly so that we manage expectations, does it appear that they understand what these problems, these challenges were, and do you think they have given sufficient assurances to sort of reignite the kind of passion we saw with the presidential election? Because we have all agreed that governance at the local level is even far more critical than it is at the center, and we don't seem to be paying sufficient attention to the state elections. Do you think they have communicated sufficiently enough to ignite that kind of passion ahead of tomorrow's election?
Well, I think they've tried. They've communicated appropriately, but it is just coming at a time when people have so much distrust for them, so to believe them is now even difficult. But really, beyond the communication, it is for them to work now. So if you've lost the confidence of people, the only way to come back is to work and work appropriately. So they have to really work and deliver and make Nigerians know that whatever that happened has happened, but it wasn't really intentional. This is really the time to show it. But really, what Nigerians should also know is that conducting a free, fair, and credible elections is beyond BVAS, is beyond IREV. It is about really the people. The quality of the elites we have, the character of the value system, predominant value system in the state. Because I mean, at the end, you cannot digitize integrity. really. So we saw how we celebrated the beavers, but we also still saw how people were able to sabotage the beavers. Because why? Because of the value system. And elections are the mirror through which you see, how healthy a democracy is in a country. So it is something that we should cherish. It is something that we should, go. I mean, we have countries like Egypt and some other countries that are not so technological as us, but they are conducting elections really. So somebody can even take sensitive materials, go to his house, sleep, wake up, and then go to the polls, and then people are voting. It is a character issue really. So beyond INEC, we should also see that this election is, in fact, we all are INEC really. We all are INEC, and we should ensure that having a credible election, it's a legacy, it's a pride as every Nigerian. So we should work towards that really. That's really my postulation.
Thank you very much. We've been talking to Dangiefa Angalapu. I hope I got it correct.
Yeah, that was
at this time. Dangiefa Angalapu is a researcher with the Center for Democracy and Development, and he has said quite a number of things that we should take home this morning. We are all INEC, and therefore we all have a responsibility for a free, peaceful, and credible election. And he said, very importantly, one that resonates with me, that election is the prism through which you measure how much a democracy has developed. We need to show to the world that we're a people of peace, we're a people of process, and we're a people of system. I want to thank you very much for showing up here. Angalapu doesn't look anything like what his brain is. And now I believe strongly in the comments that Dynamax come in small pack. If you start unpacking Angalapu, I'm sure we will get more to keep him here in the studio for another 5 hours. But this is the much that time would allow us to take this morning. I want to thank you very much. And we hope that somewhere in between the election or afterwards, we will get you back here to help us see through the prism of analysis and data how much we are fed and the areas that we can possibly improve for future election. Nigeria is here to stay. Elections will come and go. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.